Okay, I'm going to be talking about a very uh, common concern that a lot of clients have, a lot of pet owners have, and that is, do I need to catch my dog in the act? The question is, do I need to really catch him in the act, or does he know what he did wrong? This is a topic that has been the subject of debate for a very long time, for decades. As a matter of fact, it was common practice to suggest to people that, hey, you don't need to catch him in the act. There were publications written where this was told in books, in dog training books. It's in the Will and Killer books. I believe Milo Purcell was also wrote about this, and I know it's just common practice. It was just the common thing to suggest that you don't need to catch him in the act, right? Catch him in the act, meaning the timing of the consequence is immediately given after the behavior. So the gap between behavior and consequence are instant, are immediate. Now, the latest research, the data that I'm aware of, and that most dog trainers today are aware of, is 1.3 seconds. So it's 1.3 seconds between consequence and behavior. This means the sooner. So if the consequences, if the feedback is given within 1.3 seconds of the behavior, the association is instant. What this relates to is if you touch the hot stove and you get burnt instantly, you know that it was because you touched the hot stove. If you take a sip of your coffee and it's really hot and you instantly burn your lips, this consequence happened within 1.3 seconds of you taking that action. Now, if you took a sip of that hot coffee and then 10 seconds later your lips burnt, now the association is still possible, but naturally it's now maybe less likely for you to make that connection. You drink the hot coffee, and a day later or several hours later, you burn your lips, hurt. Now, naturally, now it's becoming more and more difficult for you to make that association. So, in dog training, we have the same debate, the same issue. Not much of a debate now. It is commonly accepted today, at least, that you just have got to catch the dog in the act. We are, very, very 1.3 second oriented as far as dog training goes, but there are still a lot of people that don't think that's accurate. And I'll give you the example. This is something you've probably heard. This is something you probably said, and that is, my dog knows what he did, or he knows better. He knows exactly what he did. Common example here is when you come home and there's a mess in your house. Your dog went through your trash, or you come home and there's poop or pee on your floor, and now you go, well, crap, I didn't catch him in the act, but how come he looks guilty? Right? So if the connection is 1.3 seconds, why does he look guilty right now? It's been several hours possibly, and I come home and now he's acting weird. All right. And that was the case too. Like, that's not the only example. Like the example I'm kind of referring to as well is chewing on furniture. I just talked about this in a different video when I was talking about the Killer Method books, where the suggestion in the book said, if your dog chews on furniture, you don't need to catch him in the act. That's what it says in the book. I'm not making that up. And it says grab a 2x4 or grab a piece of wood and then tie it or tape it to the dog's mouth. And the emphasis there was you don't need to catch him in the act. Another suggestion in this book, and that, by the way, I'm not picking on the William Keeler books. This is just how it was back then. This was just the common suggestion. Another piece of advice that it wasn't just him; it was the trainers. In his time, other trainers in that time would suggest, if your dog digs, hey, you don't need to catch him in the act. Now we know if the dog has a digging problem, we need to address it as the dog is digging, not after the fact. So if the suggestion was if the dog is digging, Dog digs a hole. Don't worry, you don't need to catch him in the act. The suggestion was fill it with water, bring your dog over, and submerge his nose in the hole with the water in it. And you don't need to catch him in the act. By the way, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just giving an example of the suggestions given by people who did not believe in the whole 1.3 second or the immediate feedback to the behavior. And to this day, you still have clients, you still have people that say, well, you don't need to catch them in the act. They know exactly what they did. They look guilty. And so, yeah, I'm going to give him the correction because I think he knows what he did wrong. Now, the problem in making that assumption is the dog might not actually, making the association to the behavior, but the dog might actually be making the association to the environment. So meaning I come home, this is just an example, okay? I'm sure you might have a slightly different example, a slightly different version of this example. Let's say I come home and there is a mess in the house. Maybe the dog went through the trash, or maybe the dog just took a huge dump on my floor. I come home, I see that, and I flip out. And I'm like, what the hell? Why did you do that for? I get emotionally distressed. Maybe I don't even touch my dog, but maybe I do. Maybe I just go to my dog. I lose my patience. I'm like, you did this. Why did you do that? And maybe let's say I take the route of, grab him, rub his nose on it, correct him next to the trash. And now I'm thinking, you should have known better. Now, conventional wisdom back then would tell me, well, shit, next time this happens, he's going to know what he did. So let's say 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I come home and there's a mess in the house, the trash is all over the place, or there's a huge dump on my floor. Now I come home and my dog looks quote unquote guilty. And I'm like, shit, I knew it. I know you know. I know you know exactly what happened. So I could tell you, yeah, my dog looks guilty. That's why he knows what he did. I know just because I understand how dogs make connections, it is very likely that the dog made an association to the environment, not to the behavior. Meaning, maybe he's not making the connection to the fact that he took a dump on the floor, but rather to the fact that there is poop on the floor. And Tom Rose talks about this in his book, Training with a Touch, where I don't know the exact example, but he mentioned this concept of timing and the dog knowing better. And he has an example there, an anecdote of a trainer that believed this was the case, and in reality, it wasn't the dog that looked guilty that did it. It was another dog that was doing it. Another dog was making the mess. But the dog that looked guilty, got all the attention. So in this example, there could be two dogs in the house. One dog, so dog A takes a dump. You come home and dog B actually looks guilty. So why does dog B look guilty when it was dog A that took a dump on the floor? Not because it was the behavior that it associated to it, but because the environment. So if there's a mess, they'll go, shit, I know what a mess means. Not so much, I shouldn't make a mess, because the last time I made a mess, this happened. But rather, shit, the last time there was a mess, this happened. Again, this is why it can be very ineffective to take that approach, and all you're going to do is you're just going to have the dog make the connection that there shouldn't be a mess. Now what happens is this did have a level of success naturally. So because it has a level of success, naturally, if it never worked at all, people would not have mentioned it one time. Hopefully. And although that's not always the case. But if this didn't work, people wouldn't say, okay, well let's keep talking about it and let's keep telling people to do this, because obviously it's not working, right? But the reason that it was a thing, and the reason why today people still use this approach, is because in some instances it does address some of the issues. Meaning, again, the dog doesn't make the connection to the behavior, the dog makes the connection to the environment, and so the dog now does whatever it can to avoid the environment. So, meaning, if it has to go, maybe it goes, I'm going to hold it because if I go, it's not the behavior, but it's the fact that there is poop on the floor. My owner comes home and now there's poop on the floor, and now I get in trouble. Or just like in the example of Tom Rose in his book, another dog takes a dump, and now I get the short end of the stick. So now I get stressed out because another dog took a dump or another dog made a mess, and now I'm the dog that makes that quote unquote feels or looks guilty. Now, in general, are dogs very intelligent? Are they capable of making those connections even after the 1.3 seconds? I strongly believe that they can. I know that this is how taste aversion works. This is a thing. This is actually a thing that has been observed. This happened with dogs, and actually it was done with wolves too that were eating the cattle. What they would do is, and I don't know the details of this research. I know some of you guys definitely know more about this, but taste aversion is a thing. The concept is this: if you give the dog something, or really an animal something to eat, and it makes them so sick that it actually knows, even if it's like an hour later, it makes them sick, it gives them diarrhea, it makes them vomit, even if it's way over 1.3 seconds later, taste aversion can happen. So I could eat this thing, half an hour later I'm puking my guts out, even though it didn't happen within 1.3 seconds. The fact that it made me that sick makes me go, I don't ever even want that. I don't even want to smell that. Right? That's taste aversion, and it does work on dogs. So, I do believe that dogs, in some instances, can make that connection past the 1.3 seconds, definitely. But naturally, I want to err on the side of caution. I don't want to make the assumption that the dog knew better. I want to rather be safe and go, it's already too late. I need to address this on a timely manner, because I don't want the dog to potentially make an unpleasant association to me. Right? The dog takes a dump, I come home, I get angry, rub his nose on it. The dog maybe might not make the connection that it was because he took a dump. It might make the connection that, oh, it's because I came home. Or, oh, it's because there's a turd on the ground. Whatever the case may be. Dogs make associations sometimes that we don't intend for them to make. So that's why the whole thing with timing is very, very important. You want to improve your odds. The closer to the 1.3 seconds your consequence is given after the behavior, the better your odds of the dog making that connection. The later than 1.3 seconds, the lower your odds are for this dog to make that connection. So play the odds.